Chapter 191, Her Own Doing 1. After a while, Boss Lin and his team finally calmed down. The young man quickly took out his crystals and said, "Boss, these are all of my crystals. Let's use them to exchange for food and water." Seeing this, the other three men also took out their crystals and handed them to their boss. Boss Lin nodded and said, "Okay." They had been killing lots of zombies, but the amount of crystals was limited. At this moment, they only had 37 crystal cores. After they discussed it for a while, they finally reached an agreement. Boss Lin looked at Zhao Lijai and said, "Comrade, we have 37 crystals. We want to exchange them for 250 kilograms of rice and 60 gallons of water." Hearing this, Zhao Lijai nodded and agreed, "Okay." "Jinj, call Feng Yan over," Jin Zuyan said. "Yes, Captain." Not long after, Feng Yan came over and asked, "Captain, are you looking for me?" Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Take out 250 kilograms of rice and 60 gallons of water." Feng Yan nodded, and with a wave of his hand, rice and water appeared in front of them. After he decided to follow Jin Zuyan, he never questioned his captain's decision. As long as it didn't cross his bottom line, he would follow his orders without hesitation. When Boss Lin and his men saw the food and water, they were excited. After a moment, one of them asked, "Boss, now that we have food and water, are we still leaving this place?" Boss Lin nodded and said, "We can't stay here forever. We have to find out about the situation outside and make a plan." After they heard his words, they nodded and said, "We will follow you if you leave this place, boss." "Okay, I will go find a car first. The four of you wait here for me," Boss Lin said. "Okay." Since they had finished the transaction, Jin Zuyan pulled Zhao Lijai into the warehouse and asked, "Aitg, are you thinking of helping him?" Zhao Lijai shook her head and said, "He died because of me before. Without me, he wouldn't have met the mutated animal and would have been able to survive." She turned to look at the group of men and added, "With those supplies, they should be able to leave this place and reach the survivor camp. This time, they won't have to die for those ungrateful people anymore." While she never met those four men, she knew about them from her captain. The four of them died because they stayed behind to protect the survivors. After the second rain, the animals fully mutated, and staying in this husbandry was equal to staying in a beast den. While the survivors and her captain were able to escape, the four of them became the mutated animals' food, instead as they lured the animals away. In this life, she hoped they would be able to change their fates. After Boss Lin found a pickup truck, he and his team loaded the food and water before they left in a good mood. As for the Phantom team, they decided to stay for a day before leaving tomorrow. While the members were treating the wounded and distributing supplies and water, Zhao Lijai sat in a corner and checked her space. After the mutated plants were replanted in the grassland, their growth slowed. From this, she deduced that the black soil in the farmland had better nutrients and could hasten the crop's growth cycle. She checked the oxygen level and noticed that the percentage kept increasing, albeit slowly. While she was rearranging the animals in her space, she was startled by a shout. "Give me back my son." Opening her eyes, she saw the woman who had killed the group of men glaring at an old woman who was holding a 4-month-old baby. "This is my grandson, he is not your son," the old woman retorted. The elderly couple had seen the baby's face and recognized him as their grandson. The old woman said, "He is my family's grandson. Comrade, you are abducting my grandson and now you still refuse to return him to us. How can you do this?" The older woman glared back and said stubbornly, "This is my grandson." Due to the commotion, Jin Zuyan and the rest of his team had already walked over. When Zhao Lijai arrived, she saw that the woman had already woken up. Though still weak, she looked anxious and worried. From her expression, Zhao Lijai could tell she was telling the truth. As for the old woman, she narrowed her eyes and studied her. After a moment, she stepped closer and asked, "Granny, since you say this baby is your grandson, do you have any proof?" "Why should I need proof? This baby is my grandson." Zhao Lijai turned to the woman and asked, "Sister, do you have any evidence that this baby is your son?" The woman nodded and replied, "My son has a birthmark on his waist. It's a red crescent moon." Hearing this, Zhao Lijai nodded and said, "Granny, if this baby is really your grandson and not this sister's son, all we need to do is check his waist. If there is no birthmark, then he is yours. If there is, then he is hers." Everyone nodded in agreement. The old woman shook her head and said, "I don't have any obligation to do that. This woman saw me changing my grandson's diapers. She must have seen the birthmark. So the baby does have a birthmark, Zhao Lijai said meaningfully. Granny, you said you changed your grandson's diapers. Where are the used ones? She asked. The old woman was stunned by her question and stammered, I threw them away. Where did you throw them? Zhao Lijai asked again. Avoiding her gaze, the old woman muttered, I forgot. Zhao Lijai stared at her for a moment, then said, Granny, if you can show us the used diapers, it will prove that you are not lying and this sister is the one at fault. Chapter 192, Her Own Doing 2. After a pause, Zhao Lijai added, but if you can't, then it means you never changed this baby's diapers, and this sister had no way of seeing the birthmark. That means this sister must be his mother. She would naturally know about the birthmark. Under her questioning, the old woman finally snapped and shouted, I'm not his grandmother, but I picked him up and fed him with my blood. So he is mine. No one can take him from me. The old couple and the woman were stunned. They had only been focused on getting the baby back and hadn't thought to ask anything else. Now that they heard this, they didn't know whether they should take the baby by force or not. The next moment, Wen Kai stepped forward and said, Sister-in-law, when we found this granny and the baby, she was protecting him, and we did see traces that she fed him her blood. Zhao Lijai looked at the old woman and said, Granny, even if you saved the baby's life, he is not your grandson. You need to return him to his family. As for whether you can continue to have a relationship with him, that is up to his family, but refusing to return him to his mother is unfair to him. He is just a baby, he needs his mother. When she heard her words, the old woman lowered her head and cried, I killed my real grandson with my own hands after he turned into a monster. I can't lose this one too, or I will die. Despite her words, Zhao Lijai felt no pity for her. Separating a mother and child was a cruel act. Whatever her reasons, this old woman had no right to do that. Since she still refused to return the baby, Zhao Lijai walked over and snatched him from her arms. The baby was startled and began to cry. Why? Before he could cry louder, Zhao Lijai pulled a pacifier from her pocket and placed it in his mouth. The baby immediately quieted down and started sucking on it. Give him back, the old woman shouted, lunging at Zhao Lijai. Zhao Lijai sidestepped, avoiding the attack, and asked, Brother Qin, do you sense anything wrong with this granny? Qin Luzi nodded and said coldly, she is infected. As soon as he said that, everyone backed away in a panic, no longer daring to stay and watch. I'm not infected, the old woman retorted in panic. Just after she said this, she saw a small scratch on her wrist and was stunned. The flesh around the scratch was already festering and starting to rot. She tried to remember when she had gotten it. After a moment, she laughed bitterly. Earlier, she had snuck off to eavesdrop on the conversation between these people and the husbandry's owner. When she came back, she felt a sting on her wrist but ignored it. She hadn't realized that little sting was a death sentence for her. If she hadn't gone to eavesdrop, she wouldn't have been scratched and wouldn't have been infected. In the end, everything that happened was her own doing. She raised her head and said, Please kill me. I don't want to turn into a monster. Hearing this, Zhao Lijai said, Granny, are you sure you want to die now? Who knows, you might still have a chance to survive. The old woman shook her head and replied tiredly, My son, daughter-in-law and grandson all died, leaving me alone in this world. I'm tired, I just want to rest now. Zhao Lijai looked at her for a long time before saying, Since that's the case, then I will fulfill your wish. The old woman looked at the baby in her arms and said, Please take good care of him. Zhao Lijai handed the baby to the woman and said, He has his family to take care of him. Hearing this, the old woman smiled faintly and nodded, You are right. When Zhao Lijai walked over to the old woman, the Phantom team members instinctively tried to stop her, but before they could speak, they saw their captain watching them with a firm gaze. Seeing this, they could only stand there and watch. Zhao Lijai squatted in front of the old woman and said softly, Granny, close your eyes. When you wake up, everything will be fine. The old woman smiled and whispered, Thank you. She knew the girl was lying to her. She would become a monster soon. How could anything be fine? Even if she knew that, she still let out a long sigh and closed her eyes. Zhao Lijai placed 2 fingers on the old woman's forehead and channeled her energy into the woman's body. As her energy entered the old woman's veins, it transformed into a hair-thin needle that moved through her body and pressed her nerves. Suddenly, the old woman collapsed to the ground and lost consciousness. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai took out her dagger and carefully cut away the rotten flesh on the old woman's wrist. She washed the wound with water from her space pond, applied medicine, then took out a small water bottle from her pocket and fed her more pond water. Afterward, she guided her energy back through the woman's body, steering the needle from her nerves toward the wound. Then she transformed the energy into a thin membrane and wrapped it around the infected area. She didn't know if this method would work, but she had once heard of a healer using a similar technique to save a leader's life. Standing up, she turned to the woman and said, "Sister, no matter what she did before, this granny saved your son's life, so you need to return the favor. I will give you medicine, food, and water for her. Later, you will need to check her temperature and monitor her condition. Make sure she stays hydrated. If you see any signs of the rot spreading, inform me immediately." Chapter 193, Kindness and Hypocrisy. Hearing Zhao Lijai's words, the woman nodded and said, "I understand." The old man, worried the old woman might suddenly turn into a monster, said, "Daughter, you can't." Before he could finish his words, the woman interrupted him, "Father, this sister is right. We owe this granny a debt, and I have to repay it." Meeting his daughter's firm gaze, the old man finally sighed and said, "Be careful." "I will." After kissing her son, she handed him to her mother and walked over to take care of the old woman. Zhao Lijai turned to Zyro Kai and said, "Zyro Kai, I will have to trouble you to give them some medicine, food, and water." "Sister-in-law, leave it to me," Zyro Kai replied with a smile. As a former soldier, he hated seeing innocent people die needlessly, so he felt both surprised and impressed when he saw Zhao Lijai doing her best to save the old woman. To Zhao Lijai, although the old woman had been unreasonable, she wasn't a bad person. Her determination to protect the baby showed that. So she deserved a chance at survival. As for eavesdropping on their conversation, she was just trying to survive. There was nothing wrong with that. They stayed at the warehouse for the night, and when the sun rose the next day, the woman noticed the old woman's skin had turned bluish, and the rotten area on her wrist had spread to her arm. Alarmed, she quickly went to find the soldier. "Comrade, something's wrong with the granny," she said while tugging at Gao Bohai's sleeve. Hearing this, Gao Bohai rushed over to check the situation. From a few meters away, he saw the old woman suddenly twitching on the ground. Her fingernails were growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Seeing this, he shouted, "Everyone, get away from her." "Zra!" The moment he spoke, the old granny opened her eyes and let out a deep, hoarse roar. Crack! Before the newly transformed zombie could stand up from the ground, a water bullet struck its head, killing it instantly. Everyone was stunned by the sudden turn of events and retreated to a far corner of the warehouse. Chen Qianfeng looked at them and said calmly, "Don't worry, it won't move again." Shen Jinj walked over and saw the small hole in the zombie's forehead. While burning the corpse, he commented, "Brother Qianfeng, your accuracy and control over water bullets have improved so fast." Hearing this, Chen Qianfeng smiled and replied casually, "Practice makes perfect." While the Phantom team could still joke around, the survivors watched them with a mix of fear, envy, and admiration. Despite their complicated emotions toward the Phantom team, they had no other choice but to follow them. No one dared to comment on how casual they seemed after killing someone. Unlike usual, the Phantom team didn't prepare a hot meal, but instead distributed dry rations to the survivors. Each person received 3 packs of biscuits, 3 bottles of mineral water, a protein bar, and 2 pieces of caramel candy. Although it wasn't much, it was enough to fill their stomachs and give them some energy. Some people ate until they were full without a second thought, while others saved part of the food for emergencies. After breakfast, Feng Yun took out 2 buses from his space. These had been left behind by the Eagle team during their evacuation. Given 4 military trucks by the Phantom team, the Eagle team had discarded a luxurious RV and 3 buses. Before they left the factory district, Feng Yun had collected the buses and an RV into his space. Now, the buses were finally being put to use. After packing up, Jin Zuyan gathered his team members and said, "Zhang Yuan, Shen Jinj, and Wen Mo take the second bus. Wen Kai, Li Sikai, and Zhou Huajian, you are on the first bus. Old Qin, lead the way with Feng Yun and the research team. Yin Yusheng and Gao Bohai will guard the left side. Zyro Kai and Chen Qianfeng will guard the right side. Aitg and I will cover the rear." "Understood," the members replied in unison. After organizing the team, Feng Yun collected the unused minivans and put them into his space. Under the team's supervision, the survivors entered the buses without pushing or bickering. 15 minutes later, the team departed from the warehouse. As they passed a warehouse near the entrance, a group of people saw the convoy leaving the husbandry compound. Seeing this, an old woman shouted, "Everyone, they are leaving. They really have buses and cars." Hearing this, everyone rushed out of the warehouse, waving their hands and shouting, "Wait, please wait for us." Driving at the rear of the convoy, Zhao Lijai and Jin Zuyan both heard the cries and saw the crowd in the rearview mirror. But no matter how loudly the group shouted or pleaded, he didn't stop the car and left with the team. Watching the vehicles drive away without slowing down, the people left behind broke into tears and began blaming one another. Inside the buses, some survivors had also seen what happened. After hesitating for a moment, one of them asked, "Comrade, there are still so many people left. Why don't we stop and let them come?" Hearing this, Shen Jinj turned to the young woman and said, "If you feel so bad for them, how about you stay behind and give your seat to one of them?" The moment he said this, the survivors fell silent. Everyone knew who those people were, and they also knew Boss Lin had been taking care of them. They had seen Boss Lin go out to find food and water with his men for them, but eventually, even he had stopped helping them. No one knew what happened that caused Boss Lin to give up on them, but if even someone like him couldn't tolerate them, those people must have had serious problems. Now that they relied on the Phantom team for survival, the survivors chose to ignore those left behind. Chapter 194, Establishing Authority. Seeing the survivors' reaction, Shen Jinj sneered, his tone laced with mockery as he said, "In our current situation, you should think about your own survival first. Kindness is a luxury. If you want to be kind by sacrificing yourself, that's your own choice. But if you want to act kind by forcing others to help through guilt and moral pressure, that's not kindness, that's hypocrisy. All of you should know that if not for my captain's girlfriend, my team wouldn't have bothered to help you at all. So if you still want to stay, you had better shut your mouths and keep your fake kindness and little schemes to yourselves. Next time I hear anyone question my team's decisions again, I will throw you out and let you be as kind as you want. Do you understand?" he asked coldly. As his sharp gaze swept over them, the survivors quickly lowered their heads. Compared to the man they called vice captain, this young man's gaze was far more terrifying. After a long silence, the survivors finally nodded and replied in low voices, "You understood." While the Phantom team had no significant issues with the survivors, the Eagle team was starting to have a headache. Thanks to their previous training, the team and the survivors had improved significantly as more and more people awakened their abilities. But with the rise of more ability users, it became harder for the Eagle team to control them, as most of the Eagle members were still ordinary people. Even with guns, it wouldn't be easy to subdue someone with powers. Not to mention, after the last time they were surrounded by zombies, the Eagle team had lost several members, further weakening their strength. At that moment, as they were preparing to leave the gas station, a group of ability users stepped forward and blocked their path. Seeing this, Wei Wang asked, "Comrade, what are you doing?" Standing across from him, a man with bulging muscles on his left leg said, "Captain Wei, we want to leave, and we came to ask for supplies." Wei Wang frowned as he looked at them. The group totaled 17 people, most of whom were ability users. Only 2 women in the group were ordinary people. If they left now, it would mean fewer fighters and more burden on the rest. But given their current power, the Eagle team couldn't force them to stay either. After a moment of thought, he nodded and said, "You can get supplies by exchanging crystal cores." Hearing his words, the group laughed, and the man replied, "Captain Wei, you are joking, right? We have been protecting these people and your team, and now you are asking us to pay." At that moment, Wei Wang understood they had never intended to pay. Although the Phantom team had said they would provide extra supplies for survivors, it still had to be done under proper rules. Free handouts would violate the system he had just established and would cause chaos in his team. "Comrade, you know the rules. There are no free supplies. Either you exchange them for crystal cores or you get nothing," Wei Wang said firmly. As soon as he finished, the man was angered and said, "Such arrogance, you are asking for it." Crack! The next moment, he bent his knee and in the blink of an eye, disappeared from his spot, leaving a deep crack on the ground. Duag! Wei Wang raised his right arm and blocked the incoming kick. Both were strength-type ability users, but Wei Wang was a dual ability user. His enhanced senses and physical strength far surpassed the man's. Narrowing his eyes, he said coldly, "Comrade, I already said, either crystals or no supplies." Duog crack. As he finished speaking, he grabbed the man's leg and delivered a liver punch into his stomach. The sound of bones cracking was loud and clear. Cough. The man's eyes widened in disbelief as he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Crack. Wei Wying followed up by throwing him to the ground. As he landed with a thud, the man coughed up another mouthful of blood. Everyone around them was shocked by the ruthlessness of Wei Wying's counterattack. Not only had he broken the man's ribs, he had also shattered his ankle. No matter how strong he was, without a functional leg, he couldn't use his ability now. Wei Wying stood a few steps away from the group and asked in a cold voice, "Do any of you want to fight me too?" Upon hearing this, they quickly shook their heads and stepped back. Seeing this, Wei Wying nodded and added, "If you don't want to fight, then exchange your crystal cores for supplies. If you don't want to pay, you can leave now." Fearing they wouldn't be able to find supplies elsewhere, the group reluctantly pulled out their crystals and exchanged them for dry food and mineral water. After receiving their rations, they didn't dare linger and quickly left, without even bothering to take the man, their supposed leader, with them. Watching them leave, one of the Eagle team members asked, "Captain, what should we do with that person?" Before Wei Wying could make up his mind on how to deal with that man, Gu Shao's walked over and said, "Captain Wei, if you want to establish order, you can't be soft-hearted. Since that man dared to challenge your authority, you have to punish him, or others will follow his example." Hearing this, Wei Wying was silent for a moment before he said, "That man is banished from the team. Everyone, get on the buses. We leave in 5 minutes." When his team members heard this, none of them showed pity for the man or resentment toward their captain's heartless decision, unlike how they had felt watching the Phantom team handle things before. Over the past few days, after leaving the factory district, they had witnessed firsthand how unreasonable and cruel the survivors could be. They had come to realize that ordinary people were often more ruthless than powerful ability users. After enduring repeated betrayals from the survivors, they finally understood why the Phantom team treated survivors so coldly. Chapter 195, Enjoy Life to the Fullest. Thinking back to how they had once looked down on Jin Zuyan and his team for choosing to leave the military during a national crisis, they now felt ashamed. They didn't know what the Phantom team had gone through in the past, but now they understood. The team must have been deeply disappointed by the people they once protected and no longer had the will to serve a country that stood behind such citizens. 5 minutes later, the Eagle team left the gas station, followed by Pei Yijin's team. Lying on the ground, the man watched them leave, despair filling his eyes. If he had known it would end like this, why had he acted tough and gone against the captain? Now he could only blame his own arrogance. With such heavy injuries, he didn't even know if he could survive, let alone make it out of there. After leaving the gas station, the Eagle team drove straight toward the border. Inside one of the vehicles, Wei Wying used his satellite phone to contact the base. After several attempts, the call finally connected. "Speak," came a cold voice from the other end. "Commander, we have almost reached the temporary survivor camp on the border of Linen City." "Good, the personnel from the base have been waiting for you and your team. When you arrive, hand over the mission target to them." "Commander, we encountered the Phantom team. They handed over a large group of survivors, along with all their supplies." Upon hearing this, the commander replied with a hint of joy, "Did they return with you?" "No, Captain Jin said he and his team will no longer serve as soldiers. They promised their fallen comrades that they would search for their families. He hopes the leaders will allow them to retire in peace," Wei Wying responded. As soon as he finished, the commander snorted and said, "As a soldier, it's not up to him to decide. Contact him and tell him to come back." Wei Wying was silent for a moment before replying, "Commander, I'm afraid that's not possible." "Why, are you trying to protect him and go against the orders too?" the commander asked angrily. To ensure the safety of the mission target and civilians, the Phantom team stayed behind to hold off a zombie horde. The number of zombies in the factory district was over 200,000, Wei Wying said, his voice filled with regret. There was no need for him to explain in detail. This information alone was enough to convey his meaning. With so many zombies, there is no way the Phantom team can survive. There was a long silence on the other end. Then the commander let out a long sigh and said, "I understand. Settle the survivors in the temporary camp. We will send teams to escort them back to the base." "Understood." After ending the call, Wei Wying sighed deeply. The The soldiers in the car had overheard the conversation, and all of them were filled with complex emotions. There was pity and gratitude, but above all, admiration for the Phantom Team's courage. Even trained soldiers feared death. Yet when danger came, the Phantom Team had sacrificed themselves without hesitation. Their courage alone was enough to earn them the title of heroes. While the atmosphere in Wei Wang's car was heavy, Rong Mo and Gu Shao's were in another vehicle, busy counting their wealth. 56, 57, 58. Rong Mo looked at Gu Shao's with sparkling eyes and said, "Shao's, we have a total of 58 crystals. We won't need to worry about food for a while." Seeing her so happy, Gu Shao's chuckled and replied, "We were lucky this time. No one picked up the crystals at the entrance, and we earned a lot from it." Rong Mo tucked the crystals into a bag and asked, "Shao's, do you think things will be better at the temporary survivor camp?" Gu Shao's thought for a moment, then shook his head as he looked out the window. "I'm afraid it will be worse." Before she could ask why, he turned to her and continued, "More, you have seen how hard it is for soldiers to control the survivors. As more ability users appear, the law of the jungle will take over sooner or later." "But we still have the government and laws," Rong Mo said. Shaking his head, Gu Shao's lightly flicked her forehead and asked, "Do you really think people with superpowers will follow laws now?" Rong Mo fell silent. Even she didn't want to be controlled anymore. It was impossible to expect others to follow rules she herself was unwilling to obey. Seeing her expression, Gu Shao's knew she understood. He patted her head gently and said, "More, this world isn't the same as before. Laws and governments no longer exist. The so-called government now is just a remnant of the past. They can only use military law to control people for now. However, with the production lines shut down, supplies will become more and more scarce. When that time comes, the ability users will be the ones who control the power. By then, true hell will begin." Rong Mo's heart trembled with fear as she listened. Clenching her fists, she asked, "Shao's, what should we do then?" Gu Shao's reached over and held her hand. With a soft smile, he said, "More, since we don't know how long we will live, why not forget the rules and just do our best to survive and enjoy our life to the fullest each day?" Rong Mo looked at him and saw the hidden emotion in his eyes. When their gazes met, she quickly looked away, flustered. She pulled her hand out of his grip and said, "Shao's, you deserve someone better. You know that I—" Before she could finish, Gu Shao's gently covered her mouth with his hand and said with raised eyebrows, "So what? What happened back then wasn't your fault. If you want to blame someone, blame those beasts who hurt you. Blame me for not saving you. Blame anyone, but never blame yourself." Chapter 196, Commercial District, 1. After he finished his words, Gu Shao's moved his hand from her mouth to the back of her neck. With a soft tug, he pulled her closer and kissed her. Feeling the sudden warmth of his lips, Rong Mo's eyes widened in shock. Taking advantage of her surprise, Gu Shao's pry opened her lips and deepened the kiss, ignoring the stunned Eagle team members around them. Eventually, one of the soldiers couldn't hold back and said, "Young man, we are still here, you know." That snapped Rong Mo back to her senses. Embarrassed, she pushed Gu Shao's away. He let her go, afraid she would get upset and ignore him. Flustered and unable to face anyone, Rong Mo shut her eyes and pretended to sleep. Meanwhile, Gu Shao's licked his lips, savoring her taste, and shot an unhappy glare at the soldier who had interrupted him. Seeing this, the soldiers glared back, envy clear in their eyes. They had been busy protecting the country and remained single for so many years. Now, a brat was showing off his affection right under their noses. How could they possibly tolerate that? At noon, the Phantom Team finally entered the main road and headed toward the city center. When the survivors saw this, they started to feel restless, but thanks to Shen Jin's warning earlier, no one dared to question them. 20 minutes later, they finally stopped at the roadside. Coming out of the car, Qin Luzi walked toward the last vehicle. Seeing him approach, Jin Zuyan lowered the window and asked, "What's going on?" "Captain, the road ahead is blocked and broken. We can't use the cars." "Are there any zombies around?" Jin Zuyan asked. Qin Luzi nodded and replied, "There are some wandering zombies on the road, but they can't get past due to the cars blocking it. But those trapped in the buildings are countless." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "We will go on foot." "Captain, what about the survivors?" Qin Luzi asked again. After thinking for a moment, Jin Zuyan said, "We will clear out a building and let them stay there. In a few hours, someone will come to pick them up." Hearing this, Chin Luzi assumed the captain had contacted the base and nodded. He turned and went to inform the rest of the team. Receiving the order, Shen Jinj came out of the bus and said, "Everyone get out, we will go on foot." The moment the survivors heard this, their faces turned pale as fear surged in their hearts. They were unwilling to come out, but under Shen Jin's sharp gaze, they had no choice but to follow orders. After everyone came out of the buses and cars, Feng Yun collected the vehicles and stored them in his space. While they were arranging the survivors, Zhao Lijai walked to the nearest car blocking the road. Zra! The moment she approached, a rotten hand slammed against the window as two zombies inside roared at her. She looked at them without changing her expression before glancing at the fuel meter. She then checked the fuel cap and saw it had been opened. Just like in her previous life, the fuel in the car's tank had already been pumped out by the soldiers. Although there were gas stations, the number of zombies in the surrounding area was too high for the soldiers to handle, so they pumped out fuel from abandoned cars. Because they often went out to find supplies and search for survivors, their fuel consumption was very high. To avoid having more zombies after the second rain, she had to help them evacuate. In her previous life, many people had been unable to evacuate due to a lack of gas, even if they had enough vehicles. In this life, she would help them clear out a gas station so they could refuel. That way, she might be able to change the fate of her hometown, Linen City. While she was thinking, Jin Zuyan walked over and asked, "Aitg, what are you thinking about?" Coming back to her senses, she said, "Brother Yan, do you know where the nearest gas station to the temporary survivor base is?" Jin Zuyan thought for a moment and replied, "There's a small gas station near the border." "It's not that base, I'm talking about the one in the central city," Zhao Lijai clarified. Hearing this, Jin Zuyan said, "Oh, that one." He thought for a moment and said, "If I remember correctly, there's a highway near that base, and there's a rest area on the highway. The nearest gas station should be in that rest area." After he said this, he looked at her and asked, "Aitg, what are you planning to do?" "Brother Yan, last time, because of the lack of gas, many people couldn't evacuate and died. I was thinking, if we help them get fuel, maybe they will be able to survive this time." Raising his eyebrows, Jin Zuyan replied in an affirming tone, "So, Aitg wants to help them." Zhao Lijai nodded and said, "They saved my life before, I want to repay them this time." Since it was something she wanted to do, Jin Zuyan had no objections. He brushed her hair on her forehead and said, "We can clear out the zombies in that area after we visit the commercial district." "Okay." Jin Zuyan looked at her for a moment before he took out a hair tie from his pocket and said, "Aitg, turn around." Zhao Lijai didn't know what he wanted to do, but she still listened to him. With her back facing him, she felt his fingers brush against her scalp as he tied up her hair, sending shivers to her body. His palm was calloused, but his movements were gentle. He finished tying up her hair without tugging at it. After almost 2 weeks, her hair had grown so long that it nearly reached her waist. Once he was done, Jin Zuyan lay down and kissed her cheek before saying, "It's done." Chapter 197, Commercial District, 2. Feeling embarrassed, Zhao Lijai touched her cheek and said, "Thank you, Brother Yan." Interlocking their hands, Jin Zuyan said, "Later, we have to find more hair ties for you. Your hair is beautiful, it would be a pity to cut it, so don't cut your hair anymore." "Okay," Zhao Lijai agreed readily. 15 minutes later, the survivors were equipped with blades and supplies. Jin Zuyan looked at them and said, "We will find a safe place for you to stay, but we have to go on foot. There will be a lot of zombies in the area, so keep your voice down. Now you have weapons, medicine, food and water. As long as you stay within the group and keep quiet, you won't die. For those who want to learn how to kill zombies, come forward now. We will teach you." After he finished speaking, he observed the group. After a while, only 3 women stepped forward. One of them was the young mother. Seeing this, Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "The 3 of you can join the first team." "Yes, Captain," the women said in unison. The old couple looked at their daughter's back with worry, but they didn't stop her. They understood they couldn't depend on others forever. Since they were old and no longer able to fight, the responsibility now fell on their daughter's shoulders. No matter how worried they were, they could only help her by taking care of their grandson while their daughter fought for their chance of survival. When Zhao Lijai saw the women, she smiled and said, "Sisters, later just stay close to me." The 3 of them had been saved by her and were grateful, so they were more than happy to follow her. After the short briefing, they finally departed. Jin Zuyin and Zhao Lijai walked in front, while Qin Luzi stayed in the middle of the formation to monitor the surroundings. The survivors were protected in the center, with the team members forming the outer layer. The Wen brothers were stationed at the rear in case of an ambush. With their metal-type abilities, they could adjust their formation easily, whether to go for offense or defense. Raw. As they neared the cars, zombie roars erupted from within. Since their time was limited, they wouldn't deal with the zombies trapped inside the vehicles and focus on clearing the road. Zhou Huajian used his vines to move the cars blocking the road aside as they walked forward. As soon as the path was cleared, the trapped zombies rushed toward the team. Seeing the oncoming zombies, the three women turned pale and their bodies trembled with fear. Noticing this, Zhao Lijai said, "Don't be afraid. These monsters look disgusting, but they move like old men. As long as you watch their movements, you can dodge their attacks. When you strike, aim for the head. Since you don't have much strength, it's better to dodge and go for the back of the head. If possible, stab your blade into the temple. It will destroy the brain without cracking the skull." Raw. Just as she finished speaking, several zombies charged over. Zhao Lijai glanced at the women and said, "I will show you how it's done." Duog, stab. She kicked the nearest zombie, knocking it to the ground. Stepping aside, she plunged her dagger into another zombie's temple. Duog, stab. Next, she pulled out the blade, crouched low, and swept another zombie's legs. As it hit the ground, she stabbed it in the eye. Black blood splattered as she retrieved her dagger. Looking at the women, she said, "Another soft spot is the eyes. Angle your blade upward, and it will pierce the brain." Crack. After she finished her words, she rushed forward and stabbed her dagger at another zombie's forehead, killing it instantly. Seeing how easily and ruthlessly she killed the zombies, the women were stunned. Admiration and respect filled their hearts. If someone as petite as her could kill zombies, why couldn't they? Following her instructions, the women gathered their courage and began killing zombies. With Jin Zuyin handling the front, Zhao Lijai was free to teach them without worry. At first, it took the women a long time to kill a single zombie, and they were almost injured by the sharp claws. But after a few more kills, their courage grew, and their movements became sharper and more decisive. Seeing their improvement, Zhao Lijai reminded them, "Don't forget to check the brain for crystals." "Yes," they replied in unison. After seeing how Boss Lin used crystals to trade for food, they understood their value. Even without her reminder, they were already cracking open the rotting heads, searching for them. Due to the number of zombies on the road, it took them 3 hours to reach the commercial district. Qin Luzi checked the map in his mind and said, "Captain, there are too many zombies up ahead. We should find a place to stay the night and continue tomorrow." Jin Zuyin nodded and said, "Find a building where we can rest." After a moment, Qin Luzi said, "Captain, there's a building about 20 meters away with fewer zombies." Jin Zuyin turned to the members and said, "Everyone, we will go check that building." "Understood," the members replied in unison. With that, the team moved forward slowly. When they finally saw the building, Zhao Lijai smiled. No wonder there were fewer zombies inside. It was a family restaurant. When the apocalypse began, it probably hadn't opened for business yet. The zombies inside were likely the restaurant's staff. As they stood outside the building, when Mo stepped forward to open the lock, the moment it clicked open, 3 zombies lunged at him. Top. Before they could reach him, several metal bullets pierced their foreheads. Turning around when Mo looked at Yufian and said, "Kid, with that accuracy and reflexes, you will make a great sniper." Grinning at the praise, Yufian said, "Brother Wen, it's all thanks to you. This gun is amazing." Chapter 198, Commercial District, 3. "There are 5 zombies on the second floor and 1 at the back," Qin Luzi said as he checked the map in his mind. Following his information, the Phantom team moved in and swiftly cleared the remaining zombies. Shen Jinj then burned the corpses before allowing the survivors to enter. Since the restaurant was a family restaurant, the dining area was vast but full of tables and chairs. Zhang Yuan looked at the survivors and said, "Everyone, move the tables and chairs to the corner. Those injured and weak can use them as beds. The stronger ones make do and sleep on the ground." Although the survivors were exhausted, they still followed his order and got to work. While they were getting busy making space for everyone to rest, Feng Yun and Zyro Kai went to the kitchen and pantry to check the supplies. Since the restaurant could be considered popular during the pre-apocalypse era, The amount of supplies they stocked up in the kitchen and pantry was enough for them to last for several weeks. When Xirokai saw Feng Yun collecting everything in the pantry, he asked, "Brother Feng Yun, won't you leave some for others?" Feng Yun didn't bother to even give him a glance and replied while storing the supplies in his space, "Xirokai, you are surely kind and generous." Suddenly being praised, Xirokai scratched his head and said, "Brother Feng Yun, you are overpraising me. I'm not that good." After he said this, Qin Luzi shook his head and said, "Xirokai, you are getting scolded and still proud of it." Hearing this, Xirokai was confused. He looked at his teammate and saw them laughing at him. He looked at Feng Yun and asked, "Brother Feng Yun, are you scolding me?" "I'm praising you," Feng Yun replied casually. Looking at his foolish expression, Li Sikai sighed and asked, "Xirokai, if we leave behind the supplies, how high is the chance of someone coming here to find supplies?" Xirokai scratched his head again and said, "I don't know." Li Sikai smiled and said, "This place is near the factory district, and everyone with a brain will know that the number of workers there is at least several 100,000 in total. Logically speaking, the number of zombies in that area will be high. Since the risk of danger in that area is higher than in other places, the surrounding areas near the factory district will be included in a high danger area too. Not only is it far, but the danger is also high. Even the military will not easily send teams to search for supplies in this place. With high temperatures, the supplies will spoil faster, so leaving the supplies behind will be a waste." After he finished his words, Feng Yun said, "Rather than leaving the supplies to rot, isn't it better if we take them away? Who knows, we will meet with our comrades in need of supplies like the Eagle team. By then we can just give them the supplies. It will save them trouble and also avoid the risk of wasting food." Xirokai nodded at their words and agreed with them, but he still didn't understand which part of the conversation he was being scolded at. But before he could ask again, everyone had already left to do their things. Before leaving, Qin Luzi said, "Xirokai, go help Qian Feng and Yusheng wash the utensils and pots. We need to use them to cook dinner later." "Okay." With the order, Xirokai no longer thought about the previous conversation and went to do his task. At the same time, Zhao Lijai went to the second floor to check the situation. The second floor was used as offices and a small warehouse. The items stored in the small warehouse were rice, flour, and dried ingredients. She took everything and also found medicines, several blankets, and beds. Thinking about the baby, she took out some baby formula, a thermos flask, 2 packs of diapers, some baby clothes, and a diaper bag from her space. These things were taken by her from the supermarket near Linen University. To avoid suspicion, she opened the formula and diapers. As for the thermos flask, diaper bag, and baby clothes, she cut off the tags. Using the washing machine, she washed and dried the baby clothes. Then, she put everything inside the diaper bag. When she came down from the second floor, she heard a weak baby cry and noticed everyone's annoyed expressions. While the old couple and woman tried to calm the baby, everyone glared at them. The surrounding areas were full of zombies. If they were attracted by the baby's cry, wouldn't everyone have to die with them? The old woman hugged the baby, while the woman coaxed him while feeding him some water. "Beabe, please stop crying." She knew that her son was hungry, but due to malnutrition, she no longer had breast milk. What's more, she didn't dare to feed her son after what she experienced, even if she still had some milk. "Zueli, what should we do now?" the old woman asked worriedly. When Shen Zueli was out of ideas, she saw a pair of black sneakers in front of her. Raising her head, she saw Zhao Lijai holding a diaper bag. "Sister, I found this on the second floor. I checked the items inside and there was some formula and diapers. This is for your son," she said. Shen Zueli looked at her for a moment and accepted the bag. She bowed and said, "Thank you." It had been years since Zhao Lijai saw a baby, so she was curious and felt that the baby was cute. She sat beside them and asked, "Sister, can I hug the baby?" The old couple were beaming with smiles when they heard this. Everyone saw her kill the zombies. As long as she liked their grandson, she would be willing to protect him in the future. Chapter 199, An Old Acquaintance. Before her daughter could object, Mother Shen quickly handed her grandson to Zhao Lijai while saying, "Of course." With the baby placed in her arms, Zhao Lijai's body tensed and she didn't dare to move. The moment the baby was hugged by her, he stopped crying suddenly. They looked at each other for a moment before the baby suddenly snuggled close to her chest and let out a series of blabbering. Seeing this, Mother Shen's smile became wider as she said, It seems that he likes you very much. Zhao Lijai didn't know if that was the truth, or if she only said that to make her happy. She looked at the little human and smiled. Raising her gaze, she said, "Sister, you should make some milk for your son. I can give you hot water." Hearing this, Shen Zuli nodded and said, "Sister, sorry to bother you." "It's not a bother at all," Zhao Lijai replied casually. While holding the baby with one arm, she filled the thermos flask with hot water. When the milk was ready, Shen Zuli taught her how to feed the baby. Unbeknownst to them, a sliver of energy seeped out from Zhao Lijai's paws and entered the baby's body as she held him, which made him no longer feel the pain in his small body. After feeding the baby some milk, Zhao Lijai filled up Shen Zuli and her parents' water bottles before she went to the kitchen to help out. Meanwhile, Jin Zuyan, Zhang Yuan and Qin Luzi were marking the map and making plans for tomorrow on the second floor. As for the rest of the members, they were guarding the entrance and managing the survivors. At the same time, a group of soldiers were fighting against zombies in the area a kilometer away from them. Bangs, bangs, bang. Crash, crack. The sound of gunshots and vehicles crashing against the zombies echoed in the area. "Captain, there are more zombies coming toward us." Hearing the report, a man in his 20s looked at the map and said, "Follow the road. After we cross the bridge, we will be able to shake off the zombies." The soldier driving the military vehicle nodded and stepped on the pedal, increasing the speed. As they drove, they had to avoid the abandoned cars and holes in the ground. It took them almost 30 minutes to finally shake off the zombies. After surviving the ordeal, the soldiers finally let out a sigh of relief. "Check your ammo and take a rest," the captain said while checking the surroundings. The sky darkened and the red moon rose in the sky. The zombies would become stronger, and it wasn't a wise decision to continue traveling. He looked around and saw light coming from one of the buildings. Pointing at the family restaurant, he said, "Go to that building." "Yes, Captain." With their captain taking the lead, the rest of the fleet followed closely. Before they reached the building, Qin Luzi had already informed Jin Zuyan about their arrival. "Captain, a group of people is coming. There are a total of 32 people. 7 of them are ability users, the rest are ordinary people. They will arrive in 3 minutes. Hearing this, Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Prepare more food. They will stay with us tonight." "Captain, we don't know who they are. Isn't it better to let them go somewhere else?" Shen Jinj asked. "They are not bad guys. Tomorrow they might join us to get the supplies," Jin Zuyan replied casually. Just after he finished his words, they heard the sound of car engines from outside. Due to the headlights facing the building, the survivors inside the restaurant could only block the light with their palms and squint their eyes. From the outside, they could see the group of people inside. "Captain, there are a lot of people inside. I never expected to see so many survivors hiding here," one of the soldiers said. "Let's go inside." After they came out of the military vehicles, they noticed that the door had been opened and a man was standing at the entrance, smiling at them. Looking at the familiar face, Jin Zuyan said, "Captain Zun, long time no see." Zun Qi was taken aback when he saw him. He walked over and asked, "Jin Zuyan." Noticing his surprise, Jin Zuyan chuckled and said, "After not seeing each other for a few years, you already forgot about me." "Didn't you perish during the battle against a zombie horde?" Zun Qi asked. Raising his eyebrows, Jin Zuyan asked, "Where did you hear that nonsense? My team and I are doing very well." Before he could ask more questions, he added, "Come inside and talk. It's dangerous to stay outside at this time." Hearing this, Zun Qi came back to his senses and followed him into the building. Since their captain knew the other group, the soldiers lowered their guard and followed in. Once they were inside, they realized that the number of survivors was not small. Seeing this, they thought the situation of the Phantom team shouldn't be as bad as the news they had heard. But when they saw that the total number of Phantom team members was only 17 people, including several new faces, they realized they were wrong. Jin Zuyan brought them to the second floor before he introduced his team members to his friend. After the short introduction, he asked, "Captain Zun, are you here to search for supplies?" Zun Qi nodded and said, "My main mission is to find solar panels and more satellite phones. It would be better if we can find more supplies. It's just that the number of zombies around the commercial district area was too high, so we were unable to get close to the mission location before we had to retreat." Captain Zun, my team also plans to go to the commercial district to find satellite phones. How about you join us and we can go together tomorrow? Jin Zuyan asked. Chapter 200, Join Hands. Hearing Jin Zuyan's suggestion, one of Zun Qi's team members asked, Captain Jin, if you go to the commercial district, how about those survivors? Jin Zuyan smiled and replied, I guess everyone has already heard about my team's retirement. Since my team is a mercenary team now, it's not suitable for us to take care of the survivors, so I hope Captain Zun can send the survivors back to the temporary camp. When they heard this, they looked at each other but said nothing. Noticing their hesitation, Zhang Yuan asked, Captain Zun, do you need to contact your leader first before you can make a decision? Zun Qi shook his head and said, we can send the survivors back to the camp, but the problem is we don't have enough supplies at the moment. If there are more survivors joining the base, I'm afraid we won't be able to hold on for more than 3 days. If the matter is about supplies, Captain Zun can rest assured. My team will give you supplies to solve the urgent situation in your camp as long as you take in the survivors, Jin Zuyan said. But if we send people back, we will lack manpower to complete our mission, one of Zun Qi's team members said. About that you don't have to worry, we will help you get solar panels and satellite phones. Besides that, we will help you collect supplies too, Jin Zuyan replied casually. After thinking for a moment, Zun Qi asked, how much supplies do you have at the moment? When they came in, they didn't see any trucks with supplies and thought they stored them in the building. But now that they were inside, they also couldn't find the supplies. Although it's their duty to help the survivors, they couldn't act rashly when the situation in the camp was already unstable. Noticing his concern, Jin Zuyan said, Xirokai, show them the supplies. Yes, Captain. Receiving the order, Xirokai went to the empty area and raised his hands. In less than 5 minutes, the empty area was filled with supplies that came out of thin air. Sacks were stacked neatly until they reached the ceiling, filled with rice, flour, and other grains. Besides that, there were also countless boxes of mineral water filling the area. After he took out the supplies, he stored them back into his space. When he came back, he looked at Zun Qi's team and said, my team's supplies are stored inside my space. They can be taken out whenever needed. We have enough supplies for you. It wasn't the first time Zun Qi and his team had seen ability users, as they also had some in their team. But it was the first time they met someone whose ability was space storage. Feeling excited, one of Zun Qi's team members asked, Comrade, do you want to join our team? We will ask the commander to give you double the salary. Hearing this, Xirokai snorted and replied, Comrade, are you poaching me in front of my captain? Even if you give me tenfold, I won't join your team. I have retired from the military. Now I'm just a mercenary. Being refused like this, the soldier was not embarrassed at all. He only felt it was a pity. If their team also had a space storage ability, it would be convenient when going out to get supplies. Captain Zun, have you made up your mind? Jin Zuyan asked. As long as Captain Jin can fulfill his promise, I will send my men to escort the survivors back to the camp tomorrow, Zun Qi replied. Good, now that we have reached an agreement, let's have dinner together, Jin Zuyan said as he stood up and walked away. For dinner, the Phantom team prepared soup dumplings and mantis. Although the food was simple, it was filling and warm. The survivors thought they could only eat dry biscuits, but when the food was ready, they also received a portion. Each of them got 3 mantis and a bowl of soup dumplings, with 5 dumplings and a boiled egg. When Zun Qi and his team saw this, they were shocked. No matter how generous one was, food was scarce and hard to come by, so they should eat less to survive longer. While they were still surprised by Jin Zuyan's generosity, they saw a young woman sitting behind the counter, saying, "Line up and bring your water bottle." As soon as she said this, the survivors quickly lined up in an orderly manner. Sitting behind the counter, Zhao Lijai used her pond water to fill the survivors' water bottles. They had been starving for days, and their bodies were dehydrated. With the limited water they drank every day, their bodies would get weaker with each passing day. If their bodies were weak, they wouldn't be able to survive against the zombie virus during the second reign. So to avoid having more zombies, she gave them the pond water, hoping that they could get stronger and not become zombies. While she was doing this for her own goal, in other people's eyes, she was a good person. 10 minutes later, Zhao Lijai saw a military hydration bladder and 2 water canteens placed on the counter. Raising her head, she saw an unfamiliar man. Judging from his military uniform, he must be one of the soldiers who have just arrived. Comrade, can you give me some water too? The soldier asked. Sure, Zhao Lijai nodded and filled the canteens and hydration bladder. When she was done, the soldier thanked her and left as another soldier came. Each of them had 2 1-liter canteens and 1 3-liter hydration bladder, a total of 5 liters of water. Zhao Lijai used 160 liters of her pond water just to fill up Zun Qi's team's water containers. When she was done, she used her mind to check the pond in her space. After a moment, she let out a sigh. Chapter 201, Sharing Information. Since Zhao Lijai used the pond water every day, the water surface had gone down by 3 centimeters. While she still had a lot of pond water, it proved that her pond water was not unlimited. It still took time for the pond to refill itself. Reaching this conclusion, she realized that she still had to depend on herself to provide water for others on a daily basis. Since the pond water was not unlimited, she had to use it only for emergencies. After dinner, the Phantom team members took turns doing the night patrol, while Zun Qi's team was finally able to have a good rest. Early the next morning, when the sun started rising on the eastern horizon, Qin Luzi, Chen Qianfeng, and Yin Yusheng were busy preparing breakfast, while Zyro Kai and Feng Yun were preparing supplies for Zun Qi's team. When Zyro Kai saw Feng Yun take out 3 trucks from his space, he asked, "Brother Feng, why are you storing these trucks? They not only take space, but also need a lot of mental energy when you keep or take them out." "Aren't they useful now?" Feng Yun replied nonchalantly. Zyro Kai thought for a moment and agreed with him. If he hadn't stored these trucks, they would have to find trucks to carry the supplies, and it would take longer to prepare. "Then we should find a few more trucks later, just in case we need them in the future," he said. This time, Feng Yun nodded at his words. His space was big, and he had divided some areas to store the trucks and buses. Even if they took space, he could just put supplies on those buses and trucks while they were stored in his space, so he didn't lose much storage. Jin Zuyan asked them to prepare 5 trucks of supplies for Zun Qi's team, so while Zyro Kai filled up the trucks with supplies, Feng Yun went to find 2 more usable trucks. He searched for a while before he found 2 trucks with almost full gas. Since the surrounding cars no longer had fuel, he decided to let Zun Qi's team find more gas by themselves later. When he returned with the 2 additional trucks, Zyro Kai had already filled 3 trucks. In order to balance the supplies in their spaces, Feng Yun filled up the rest of the trucks. Besides grains and mineral water, they also gave them medicines, dried food, and some compressed biscuits. Compressed biscuits and dried food could be given to the soldiers who went out on missions, and the grains would be given to the people in the camp. After they were done, Feng Yun took out 2 buses from his space before they returned to the building for breakfast. While they ate, Zun Qi pointed at the ability users in his team and said, "Besides the 6 of you, the rest will escort the supplies and survivors back to the camp." Hearing this, the vice captain said, "Captain, the commercial district is full of zombies. It's too dangerous with only 7 people going." Zun Qi swallowed his food and said, "We are ability users, so we will be able to escape if the situation becomes too dangerous. I need you to lead the rest of our team back. With the amount of supplies you are bringing back this time, that side will definitely try to cause trouble, so you have to stay behind to control the situation in the camp." After hearing this, the rest of his team members could only follow his order. Yesterday, they had seen the situation in the commercial district and knew that even if they went, they would only become a burden or even lose their lives. Their captain was right, they had to do what they could. While the atmosphere in Zun Qi's team was tense, the Phantom team was relaxed. While they were eating, Shen Zuli walked over and said, "Sister, can I talk with you for a moment?" Zhao Lijai looked at her and nodded, "Sure." The 2 of them went to the counter area, and she asked, "Sister, what do you want to talk about?" After hesitating for a moment, Shen Zuli said, "Sister, I heard that the survivors will go with the soldiers to the temporary camp today. Is that true?" Zhao Lijai nodded and confirmed her question, "Yes." "Can my family stay with you?" Shen Zuli asked. Raising her eyebrows, Zhao Lijai asked, "Sister, why do you want to stay with me? My team is a mercenary team, and you have your old parents and a baby. Isn't it better for you and your family to stay at the temporary camp? At least that place is safer than outside." Hearing this, Shen Zuli didn't know what to say and went silent. After thinking for a while, Zhao Lijai said, "Sister, if you are worried about lacking supplies in the temporary camp, you can join the soldiers and go out to find supplies." I heard that some camps have already started issuing missions, and that lots of people form groups as mercenaries. You can exchange your rewards for a place to stay or supplies. If you want, you can also go out by yourself or with your team. It's just that some places might ask you to hand over half of the supplies you find outside as the tax. Hearing this, Shen Zuli asked, "Sister, how do you know about these?" My team has our own information channel. Since we can be considered to have fate, I will share this information with you. Also, when you get crystal cores from killing zombies, remember to keep them safe. You might need them in the future, Zhao Lijai replied. Sister, is there really no way for me to join your team? Shen Zuli asked, unwilling to give up. Sister, it's not that I don't want you to join, but with your parents and your son, it's really unsuitable for you to follow me and my team. We go to the most dangerous areas to kill zombies and collect supplies. Chapter 202, Discrepancy in Power 1. After hearing Zhao Lijai's explanation, Shen Zuli understood that the problem wasn't just her weak, old parents, but because of her baby. Zombies were sensitive to sound. If her son cried, it would bring trouble to the team. So it was understandable that Zhao Lijai rejected her. When she reached this conclusion, she nodded and said, I understand. Sister, thank you for helping me and my family. If we have fate and meet again in the future, I will definitely repay your kindness. I'm just helping you along the way. There is no need to be so polite. Just live well and kill more zombies. That will be the best repayment for me, Zhao Lijai replied with a smile. Shen Zuli smiled and said, okay. After their brief conversation, Zhao Lijai went back and finished her breakfast. While Zun Qi's team was arranging the survivors, she went to the second floor and packed up 3 backpacks of supplies for Shen Zuli. With a baby with her, it would be harder to find supplies. So she gave her 10 cans of baby formula, 3 boxes of baby cereal, 5 packs of diapers, and some baby and women's products. Besides that, she also gave her medicines and compressed biscuits. Thinking about the small baby, she hid a handful of crystal cores inside one of the backpacks. When she came back from the second floor, she walked over to Shen Zuli and said, Sister, I found some baby and women's products on the second floor. Here, these are for you and your son. Seeing the backpacks, Mother Shen and Father Shen were stunned. Although they knew it was hard to get supplies, they still accepted them. The old couple bowed to Zhao Lijai and said, Thank you, comrade. Zhao Lijai patted their shoulders and said, Uncle and Auntie, I hope you all stay safe and sound. Not long after, they heard the soldiers say, It's time to depart. Everyone, get into the buses. With that, the survivors left the family restaurant and boarded the buses one after another. The soldiers entered their military vehicles, with some driving the buses and trucks. With the armored vehicles guarding the perimeter, the supplies and survivors were protected in the middle. Before they left, the survivors waved at the Phantom team as they said their goodbyes and thanked them. After they left, Jin Zuyan said, Pack up, we are leaving too. Yes, Captain. Compared to the survivors, they only needed 5 minutes to pack up and leave the family restaurant. Before leaving, Jin Zuyan said, Captain Zun, we will lead the way. You only need to follow us closely. Okay, Zun Qi agreed readily. Unlike Zun Qi's team, who's used a military vehicle, Jin Zuyan's team only used SUVs. As usual, Jin Zuyan drove Zhao Lijai's SUT while the rest of the members split into 3 cars. After driving for a while, Qin Luzi said, There's a group of zombies up ahead. We have to get down and clear the road. Hearing this, Shen Jinj used the taillights to send a message using Morse code. Seeing the message, they responded with a message using the headlights. When they were about 20 meters away from the zombies, they parked their cars and got out. Seeing this, Zun Qi and his team also exited their vehicle. We will clear the road first before we continue, Jin Zuyan informed them. Before Zun Qi could warn them about the number of zombies, the Phantom team members had already taken out their airguns and started shooting the zombies. Top. It's raw. The moment the zombies caught their scent, they rushed over with their mouths wide open. Seeing this, Zun Qi and his team pulled out their guns and prepared to shoot. Don't use guns, you will attract more zombies, Gao Bohai reminded them. Hearing this, one of the soldiers asked, Comrade, if we don't use guns, then how do we kill the zombies? Pop. Gao Bohai killed a zombie pouncing at them from the side as he said, You either use an airgun or a blade. Zun Qi looked at the airguns in the Phantom team's hands and asked, Comrade, where did you get the airguns? Our team members made them. We can make some for you, but you will need a Wind-type ability user to fill the code 2 cartridges. Otherwise, it's better to use blades, Gao Bohai replied. Crack bam. While they were talking, they heard noise from the front. Turning their heads, they saw Zhou Huajian using his vines to move cars off the road. He stacked the vehicles together so they wouldn't block the way. Seeing this, Zun Qi was stunned. His team was considered one of the strongest in the camp, thanks to having 7 ability users, but compared to the Phantom team, they suddenly seemed weak. Not only did the Phantom team have Wood-type, Metal-type, and Wind-type ability users, but their marksmanship and close combat skills were far superior. His team only awakened basic-type abilities, such as vision, hearing, smell, and strength. "Captain, should we help them?" one of his team members asked. Zun Qi shook his head and said, "No need. Observe their fighting style and learn from them." Understood. In less than 15 minutes, all the zombies had been eliminated. When Zun Qi and his team thought they would be leaving, they saw Shen Jinj burn the zombies' corpses with his blue flame, while Zyro Kai collected the crystal cores. This time, they finally realized that the Phantom team might have more ability users than they had initially thought. "Captain, we are done," Zyro Kai reported. Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Let's go." As they got closer to the commercial district, the number of zombies increased, and the road was either blocked by abandoned cars or destroyed by the battles that had taken place there before. Seeing this, they decided to continue on foot. After Feng Yun stored their vehicles in his space, when Mo and Wen Kai created 7 metal blades and handed them to Zun Qi and his team. Chapter 203, Discrepancy in Power 2. "Captain Zun, you and your team should stay in the middle," Zhang Yuan said. Even though they felt humiliated being treated like the weak survivors, they couldn't object. After all, they were indeed weaker in comparison. Before they entered the commercial district, they saw that the road ahead was packed with zombies. The roars of the zombies echoed clearly through the air. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai frowned and said, "Why are there so many zombies here? Isn't the apocalypse supposed to have started at dawn?" Before the apocalypse, there was a night event held in this commercial district. They were doing a 50% sale for all stores, Zun Qi explained. "No wonder," Zhao Lijai sighed. Seeing her talking with Zun Qi, Jin Zuyan leaned closer and said, "Aitg, don't be afraid. Brother Yan will protect you." Hearing this, Zhao Lijai rolled her eyes and walked away. She wasn't some delicate flower who needed him to protect her. Jin Zuyan chuckled when he saw her eye roll and said, "Aitg, wait for me." Watching the famously stoic Captain Jin act like a teenager in love, Zun Qi and his team were visibly shocked. Before they continued deeper into the commercial district, when Mo and Wen Kai created BB guns for Zun Qi and his team. They watched with wide eyes as the Wen brothers created the guns with several waves of their hands. Once the airguns were ready, Qin Luzi filled the code 2 cartridges. This time, they didn't even know how to respond. At the temporary survivor camp, there was a Wind-type ability user. Due to his ability's offensive power, he held an important position in the camp and was part of the decision-making team. They had thought that person was already very powerful, but now, compared to the Phantom team members, he looked like a joke. After Qin Luzi finished filling the code 2 cartridges, he handed the guns over and said, "If the cartridges are empty, just find me. I will refill them for you. Unless necessary, don't use your abilities." Zun Qi accepted the gun and said, "Okay." Not long after, Zhang Yuan walked over and asked, "Is everything ready?" Qin Luzi nodded and replied, "Vice Captain, we are ready to go." Jin Zuyan divided the team into 2 groups. One would open the way, and the other would guard the rear. They would take turns every hour so that everyone could rest and recover their energy. Zun Qi and his team would remain in the center of the formation. "Let's go." With Jin Zuyan's command, they moved toward the biggest shopping mall in the commercial district. The moment they entered the perimeter, the surrounding zombies noticed them. "Raw. Top. The moment the zombies pounced, they fired their airguns, killing them efficiently. Due to the high number of zombies, they could only move forward slowly. Top. Crack. As they advanced, they continued killing the zombies one by one. While the team members killed the zombies, Shen Jinj and Jin Zuyan burned the corpses, and Zhao Lijai and Zyro Kai checked the crystal cores. Watching the seamless coordination, Zun Qi and his team carefully observed and took mental notes of their teamwork. 40 minutes later, they finally reached the shopping mall. This time, the number of zombies exceeded tens of thousands outside the building. Raw. Be careful, there are several level 2 zombies and one level 3 zombie in this area, Chin Lucy warned. Just as he finished speaking, a fireball the size of an exercise ball came flying at them at high speed. Boom! Before it could hit them, a blue fireball the size of a watermelon shot forward and collided with it in the air. Although the blue fireball was smaller, its temperature and power were higher. After extinguishing the red fireball, it continued flying and hit a group of zombies, killing them instantly. It's a level 3 zombie. At Chin Lucy's warning, the Phantom team members holstered their guns and drew their blades. Fighting high-level zombies with guns was ineffective. It was hard to aim properly, and the chance of being unable to block the attack was too high. Rather than waste ammo and risk injury, it was better to fight with blades. Just as he finished speaking, 2 more fireballs flew at them. This time, Jin Zuyan unsheathed his longsword and slashed horizontally. Wash tilde boom, boom. A crescent-shaped black fire blade flew out and collided with the fireballs midair. The resulting explosion sent waves of wind, dust, and debris flying. Stay in formation, I will handle that zombie. The rest of you keep clearing the rest of the zombies. Yes, Captain. The moment he finished speaking, Jin Zuyan bent his knees and leapt into the air. Clang! The sound of his blade clashing with sharp claws echoed through the area. Meeting the pair of black eyes, Jin Zuyan narrowed his eyes and slashed down. Duog boom! Sensing the danger, the zombie kicked Jin Zuyan, sending him crashing to the ground. The impact cracked the ground, while the zombie landed atop a nearby car. Roar! The zombie let out a furious roar and spit 3 fireballs at him. Boom, booms, boom. The fireballs hit the ground where he fell and exploded on impact. Seeing the explosion, the Phantom team members' eyes widened in shock. Captain! Before their voices faded, Jin Zuyan shot out of the dust cloud. While still airborne, he slashed downward his longsword, sending another flame blade toward the zombie. Unlike before, this flame blade was larger and faster. Boom! Before the zombie could react, the flame blade reached its target. To avoid being killed, the zombie twisted its body. Crash! Raw! It narrowly avoided death, but not injury. Its shoulder was severed, and its arm fell to the ground, both covered in black flames. Seeing this, the corner of Jin Zuyan's lips lifted slightly. After landing, he raised his hand. The next moment, the wisp of black flame on the zombie's body suddenly blazed up. Raw! Chapter 204, Discrepancy in Power, 3. The zombie rolled on the ground, trying to extinguish the fire. But instead of dying out, the black flames grew larger, eventually engulfing its entire body. With Jin Zuyan pouring more energy into the flames, the zombie soon turned into a pile of black ash. At the same time, the surrounding zombies were also reduced to ash. Seeing the crystals glistening on the ground, Zyrokai quickly collected them into his space. With the level 3 zombie defeated, Jin Zuyan and his team resumed clearing the remaining zombies with their BB guns. It took them several hours before they finally reached the entrance of the shopping mall. By this point, Zun Qi and his team were already feeling tired. Even if they didn't use their abilities to kill the zombies, holding onto the guns for so long had still caused their arms to feel sore. With the addition of tense nerves and full focus, they were mentally drained. Noticing their fatigue, Jin Zuyan said, "We will clean up the ground floor and rest first." Understood, his members replied in unison. Seeing that they were still full of energy and stamina, Zun Qi and his team could only grit their teeth and continue to follow them. This time, they finally realized the true strength of one of the strongest teams in the country. "Captain Zun, can you hold on for another half hour?" Suddenly hearing a sweet, soft voice beside him, Zun Qi turned his head and saw Zhao Lijai looking at him with concern. Besides a thin layer of sweat on her forehead and nose, she didn't show any signs of fatigue. Feeling embarrassed at being weaker than a young girl, he nodded and said, "I'm fine." Seeing how his clothes were drenched in sweat, Zhao Lijai thought for a moment, then took a crystal core from her pocket and handed it to him. "Captain Zun, you are an ability user, so you should try to absorb the energy in this crystal. Although I don't know what your ability is, absorbing the energy should help you recover some stamina and strength." Zun Qi was surprised when he heard her words. Thanks to the doctors and researchers whom they rescued from the hospitals, They knew that the crystals found inside zombies' heads contained an unknown energy, but not many people knew this, let alone know how to use that energy. Seeing he was lost in thought, Zhao Lijai called out, "Captain Zun." Snapping back to his senses, Zun Qi accepted the crystal core and asked, "How do I absorb the energy?" "Captain Zun, when you hold the crystal, can you feel energy flowing into your body from it?" Zhao Lijai asked. Focusing his mind, Zun Qi felt a faint warmth seeping into his body through his pores. He nodded and waited for her next words. "Try to guide the energy into your body." Following her instructions, Zun Qi concentrated. The faint energy soon became a steady stream, entering his body. As it flowed through his veins, it washed away his fatigue and muscle soreness. When the energy reached his brain, it was absorbed by an unknown force. In that moment, his energy and stamina recovered instantly. Feeling the changes in his body, he looked at Zhao Lijai with astonishment. Meeting his gaze, she knew he had succeeded. She took out a handful of crystal cores from her pocket and handed them to him. "Captain Zun, distribute these to your team and teach them how to absorb the energy. We still have a long day ahead, and everyone needs to recover quickly," she said with a smile. After finishing her words, she moved to the back of the formation. Walking beside Jin Zuyan, she glanced at him but didn't see any change in his cold expression. Even so, she could feel the low pressure around him. She knew he was angry and probably jealous. While she thought his feelings were domineering and overbearing, she understood. After all, she also got annoyed when she saw him talking to another woman. While she was observing him, Jin Zuyan waved his hand and burned the surrounding zombies into ashes. He couldn't vent his irritation on Aitg, so he took it out on the zombies. Once he had absorbed a large amount of energy, he took her hand and silently transferred some to her. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai chuckled and intertwined their fingers while asking playfully, "Brother Yan, are you jealous?" Jin Zuyan glanced at her but didn't answer. He didn't want to lie to her, but he also didn't want to admit it, so he stayed silent. "Brother Yan, don't be angry. I only taught Captain Zun how to absorb the energy from the crystal core. If they collapse from exhaustion, they will drag us down. I did it for our team," she explained. Hearing her explanation, his mood improved and he finally asked, "Really?" "Of course, Brother Yan, you know you are the most important to me, so can you stop ignoring me?" Zhao Lijai asked softly. Feeling better, Jin Zuyan cleared his throat and replied, "I wasn't ignoring you. It's Aitg who was ignoring me." Okay, it's my fault. I apologize. Don't be angry anymore, all right?" Zhao Lijai gave in and coaxed him. Since they were still surrounded by zombies, Jin Zuyan simply nodded and said, "Okay." While the two of them whispered to each other with pink bubbles practically floating around them, their attacks were fierce and brutal. The Phantom team members watched them and felt a chill run down their spines. With energy from Jin Zuyan, Zhao Lijai summoned water blades and beheaded the zombies around them. As the blades flew past their heads, they sliced through the rotting skulls and split the brains clean in half. As the zombies collapsed, black blood and rotten matter splattered across the ground. The dried, cracked pavement was quickly covered in sticky blood, and the air was thick with a rancid stench. With Zhao Lijai covering the left and right areas, Jin Zuyan guarded the rear. Chapter 205, Discrepancy in Power, 4. Jin Zuyan raised his hands and created a wall of black flame that moved at a fast speed, covering a 100-meter radius behind them. Any zombie that came into contact with the black flame turned to ash in under a minute. When Qin Luzi saw that his captain and sister-in-law were enjoying themselves, he holstered his gun and leaped into the air. Zun Qi and his team were stunned to see him suddenly jump into a group of zombies. Before they could react, they saw him floating midair. In an instant, their jaws dropped in shock. Hovering above the zombies, Qin Luzi raised his hand. With a snap of his fingers, the atoms in the air shifted and compressed. Boom, booms, boom. In a split second, several groups of zombies exploded. Over 100 were instantly killed and turned into pools of blood and rotten flesh. "Captain, it's faster to use our abilities," Qin Luzi said casually while continuing his attacks. Checking his watch, Jin Zuyan said, "Clear the area in 30 minutes." The Phantom team members' eyes lit up the moment they heard his words. Finally, they could go all out. Following his order, Shen Jinj launched a blue fireball at the horde. Whoosh tilde boom. While Qin Luzi manipulated atoms with one hand, he used the other to summon a tornado. When the tornado collided with the blue fireball, it transformed into a raging fire tornado. As Qin Luzi maintained control over the tornado, Shen Jinj let go of his control and narrowed his eyes. After a moment of thought, he raised both hands above his head, gathering energy in his palms. Soon, a visible blue membrane formed around them, and a massive fireball with a diameter of 2 meters appeared above his head. The temperature increased sharply, yet he was still as calm as usual. With a smile on his handsome face, Shen Jinj threw the fireball into the air. When it was 100 meters away, he clapped his hands. Boom! The giant fireball exploded, turning into a shower of smaller fireballs that rained down across the area of a 100-meter radius. The initial explosion killed over 200 zombies, and the falling fireballs killed another 300 zombies. Though his blue flame wasn't as hot or destructive as Jin Zuyan's black flame, its power was still 2 levels above an average fire ability. In just 2 minutes, the zombies were reduced to ashes. Seeing this, the other members thought the same thing inwardly: show off. Not wanting to fall behind, they unleashed their own area attacks. Even Zhao Lijai couldn't hold back and joined in. With her increased energy pool, she created 2 massive crescent-shaped water blades, each 2 meters wide. With a wave of her hands, the blades spun through the zombies group, beheading multiple zombies at once. Thanks to their size, each blade beheaded at least 3 to 5 zombies in a single pass. Crack, crack, crash, crash. Zun Qi and his team stood frozen, stunned by the display of raw power from the Phantom team. Captain, they are monsters, one of his team members said. Hearing this, Zun Qi replied, this is no longer a matter of skill, this is a discrepancy in power. With the Phantom team releasing their full attacks, they finally entered the shopping mall after 37 minutes of intense battle. Due to the loud sound of their attacks, even the zombies from 300 meters away were attracted and rushed over. So after they finished, there wasn't a single zombie wandering on the road. As for those on the shopping mall's ground floor, they were cleared in half an hour. When they were finally able to take a rest, everyone slumped to the ground and breathed heavily. Standing in front of them, Jin Zuyan shook his head and said with disappointment, just fight for a while and all of you are already as tired as dogs. Even my Aitg is stronger than you all. Hearing her name being called, Zhao Lijai walked over to him and said, Brother Yan, there is a restaurant there. I already checked inside and there are no zombies. Reaching out, Jin Zuyan patted her head gently and said, well done, Aitg. When his members saw how proud their captain was, they turned their faces away, unwilling to be abused by him. After resting for a while, they pushed themselves up and walked to the restaurant. As Zhao Lijai said, there were no zombies inside and the area was clean. Besides the faint, rancid stench in the air, everything was good. After lunch, we will check the ground floor and find the supplies, Jin Zuyan said. Understood, they replied in unison. Today, they didn't cook a warm meal for lunch, but ate compressed biscuits instead. While everyone was eating biscuits, Zhao Lijai unzipped her backpack and took out 2 cups, 2 packs of instant coffee, and 2 self-heating hot pots. While she waited for the hot pot to cook, she prepared 2 cups of coffee for herself and Jin Zuyan. The moment the hot water was poured into the cups, the aroma of coffee spread in the air. Smelling this, everyone perked up. They looked at her and Zyro Kai asked, Sister-in-law, do you have more coffee? Zhao Lijai nodded and took out more instant coffee. While they thought she had prepared it beforehand, she had actually taken it out from her space and used her backpack as cover. At this moment, only Jin Zuyan and Feng Yun knew that her backpack was filled with lightweight items such as instant noodles, paper bowls, and paper cups. To boost everyone's energy, she used her pond water to prepare the coffee. With her ability to control water, she only needed to heat the temperature, and the coffee was ready. After lunch and drinking some coffee, they took a short nap. When it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Jin Zuyan said, pack up, we are leaving. The moment they received the order, their drowsiness disappeared, and they were ready for battle. As for Zun Qi and his team, their energy had recovered thanks to drinking Zhao Lijai's pond water and absorbing the crystal core's energy. Chapter 206, Evolving Process. With Qin Luzi leading the way and acting as their map, they saved a lot of time clearing out the zombies trapped inside the stores. The ground floor stores were a mix of clothing stores, accessory stores such as bags, jewelry, and shoes. Besides that, there were also stores selling beauty products such as makeup and skincare products. Between the stores, there were some selling snacks, drinks, and even restaurants. Zyro Kai and Feng Yun only took important supplies due to limited space, while Zhao Lijai took everything after they left. She had lots of space, and women love beauty. Even if the accessories and makeup would become useless, there was no harm in collecting them. But out of all the stores, her priority was the jewelry, especially the jade stores. In her previous life, there was a research result stating that some jade contained energy purer than that inside the crystal cores. While the number of this kind of jade was low, the number of people willing to buy them was countless. Not to mention, the amount of energy inside the jade varied from less than a level 1 crystal core to more than a level 6 crystal core. The pure energy itself was enough to attract everyone. With purer energy, they would be able to absorb more energy during the absorption process. During the breakthrough process, it's crucial to absorb more energy in case they lacked energy and caused backlashes, so jade was the best option. When she entered the jade store, Jin Zuyan followed after her. Walking to her side, he asked, "Aitg, are you planning to take the jade?" Zhao Lijai nodded and said, "If we are lucky, we can find some with energy inside." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Then I will guard outside. You can take your time." "Thank you, Brother Yan," Zhao Lijai replied with a smile. When she was alone, she waved her hands and collected everything into her space. She would slowly check the jade later. Unbeknownst to her, the moment the jade entered her space, the surrounding energy entered the pile of jades. While some could absorb more energy, others could only absorb a little. At the same time, the transparent crystal cores stored inside the boxes slowly turned into energy and were absorbed by the space. During the process, the energy that couldn't be absorbed by the jade seeped into the soil, water, and merged with the air. Not long after, a small transparent box appeared out of nowhere. Maximum energy capacity has been reached, entering the evolving process. Time, 5 hours. Not knowing that her space was changing, Zhao Lijai continued to collect supplies. 2 hours later, they finally finished clearing up the ground floor. Checking the shopping mall map, Jin Zuyan said, "The underground floor is the supermarket. We will go there and get the supplies before we check the upper floor." Understood, the members nodded. Since there was no electricity, they used the emergency stairs, but before they could open the door, they heard the sound of roaring coming from behind it. Bang, crit! The sound of banging and the collision between metal and sharp objects echoed in the area. "Captain, there are a total of 79 zombies on the staircase," Qin Luzi said. Hearing this, Zun Qi glanced at him thoughtfully. He was confused as to how the Phantom team was able to avoid so many sudden attacks from the zombies and know the location of hidden zombies. Now that he heard Qin Luzi's words, a bold guess flashed in his mind. He had seen how they fought and knew that Qin Luzi was a wind-type ability user, but with his precision in pinpointing the location and number of zombies, there was a high possibility he had another ability. At this moment, the Phantom team members didn't notice his thoughts as they were focused on their tasks. Since there were zombies on the other side of the door, Zhao Lijai said, "Let me do it." Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Everyone move back." With everyone taking several steps back, Zhao Lijai created several ice needles and sent them to the other side through the keyhole. Afterward, she controlled the temperature and changed them into a water blade. Since she couldn't see the situation, she just let the water blade fly randomly. Crash, crash, crash. It's raw. Standing not far behind her, Qin Luzi said, "Sister-in-law, there are 7 zombies on the upper left and 18 on the bottom right." Following his instructions, Zhao Lijai controlled the water blade toward the direction he told her. 5 minutes later, Qin Luzi checked the map in his head and said, "Sister-in-law, there are 3 more zombies on the right side, 2 meters forward." Crack, crack, crack. When the last red dot disappeared from his mind, Qin Luzi nodded and said, "All the zombies are cleared." As he said this, Zhao Lijai opened the door. The ground and stairs were filled with mutilated zombie corpses. Seeing this, Jin Zuyan waved his hands and burned the corpses. Out of the 79 zombies, there was not a single crystal found. "These zombies were trapped here and so weak, there are no crystals at all," Zyro Kai complained. After he said this, the Phantom team felt there was no challenge at all in killing these zombies, while Zun Qi and his team remained silent. For them, killing even these weak zombies took a lot of effort, but when it came to the Phantom team, it sounded as if they were unhappy dealing with such weak zombies. As they went to the underground floor, the number of zombies was less compared to the ground floor. Since the night event was held by the stores at midnight, the supermarket had been closed. Besides some wandering zombies outside the gate, Chin Luzi didn't find any zombies inside. After checking the surrounding areas, he said, "Captain, there are no zombies inside." When Jin Zuyan heard this, he nodded and said, "We will stay here for the night and continue tomorrow." Chapter 207, Revealing the Space, 1. Hearing this, Wenmo went to the gate. With a flick of his wrist, the padlocks unlocked with a click. He opened the door and waited for everyone to enter the supermarket before locking the gate again. Before they went to rest, Chin Luzi, Shen Jinj, and Feng Yun went to check the entire supermarket. The supermarket had 3 floors, and each floor covered an area of more than 80,000 square meters. The area used to display products was 18,000 square meters, and the rest was used as warehouses. Seeing the amount of supplies in the supermarket, Zun Qi and his team were delighted. While they were delighted, they also fell into a dilemma. Their team didn't have any space-type ability users, so it would take a long time to transport these supplies. If they left the supplies behind, they were afraid they would be destroyed by others. When they went out to find supplies, most of the time the goods weren't destroyed by zombies or spoiled due to weather. Instead, they were damaged because some people took supplies for granted and didn't handle them carefully during transportation. They would take away some supplies but didn't want to leave anything behind for others, so they would either open the packages or half-eat the supplies. This was one of the reasons why the amount of supplies they found was not enough to sustain the base's consumption. While they were discussing the solution, Chin Luzi had already returned and reported, "Captain, the area is clear." "Good, go take a rest," Jin Zuyan nodded. While the members prepared dinner, Zyro Kai and Feng Yun went to collect some supplies they lacked. At the same time, Zhao Lijai went to the warehouses and took half of the supplies stored inside. After thinking for a moment, she took another portion, leaving only 1/5 of the supplies. The number of survivors at Zun Qi's survivor camp was less than 5,000 people. With the amount of supplies in the warehouse, combined with those in the store, it was more than enough to sustain them for a year. The rest of the supplies she took today would be kept for other survivor camps. Based on her memories, there were a total of more than 230 survivor camps in Linen City. If she wanted to use supplies to evacuate them to another city, she had to find more supplies. After a while, Zun Qi went to find Jin Zuyan to discuss the supplies. They sat inside a small office room near the warehouse area on the first underground floor. "Captain Jin, since your team has 2 space-type ability users, I want to ask for your help to transport the supplies," Zun Qi said. When they saw the amount of supplies in the supermarket, Jin Zuyan had already guessed that Zun Qi would come to ask for help. After all, if they had to transport the supplies using trucks, not to mention the amount of gas needed, the time and manpower required would not be small either. Therefore, when he heard Zun Qi's words, he nodded and said, "Captain Zun, we can help you transport the supplies, but we want 1/3 of the supplies." Hearing this, Zun Qi's mind spun at a fast speed. With their current daily consumption, the amount of supplies they found was enough for them for at least 1.5 years. Even if they split the supplies, they would still be able to last for a year. Even if they rejected the request, with the strength of the Phantom team, it would be impossible for them to defeat them. Rather than creating a rift and getting nothing in the end, it was better to cooperate. After considering the pros and cons, Zun Qi said, "Okay, it's a deal." "Captain Zun, you and your team can leave the rest to me and my team," Jin Zuyan said as he stood up. Zun Qi stood up as well and said, "Thank you in advance for your help." Jin Zuyan smiled and replied, "Each of us takes what we want, so there is no need to thank me." After saying those words, he left the office and went to gather his team. The small office was given to Zun Qi and his team, while the Phantom team took the second underground floor's office. Inside the 30-square-meter room, everyone sat around a long square table. Jin Zuyan looked at them and said, "Zun Qi asked for our help to transport the supplies to his temporary survival camp, and I agreed to his request." Hearing this, Zyro Kai said, "Captain, I don't have any more space. How do you plan to transport all those supplies?" "I can only load at most 1/10 of the total amount of supplies in this supermarket," Feng Yun added. When they heard this, the members looked at Jin Zuyan, waiting for his decision. At this moment, Jin Zuyan looked at Zhao Lijai. When she met his gaze, she understood what he wanted to do. She looked at everyone and thought for a while. Although they had met less than 10 days ago, she and Jin Zuyan's team had already experienced many life and death situations together. Even if she couldn't trust them 100% and fully reveal her space's secrets, it was all right to let them know she had won. By revealing her space to her team members, it would be easier to collect supplies in the future. After considering everything, she looked at Jin Zuyan and nodded. Seeing this, he held her hand and squeezed it lightly before saying, "Besides Zyro Kai and Feng Yun, Aitg is also a space-type ability user." As soon as he said this, Feng Yun smiled. They were finally revealing it to the team. While he was calm, the rest of the members were surprised, especially Zyro Kai. He looked at Zhao Lijai and asked, "Sister-in-law, when did you awaken your space-type ability?" Zhao Lijai scratched her nose and replied, "On the same day, I awakened my water-type ability."